next up, we have got our technical director joining us, Alexandra, who is going to talk us through the recent upcoming standards, releases and revisions that are available to support trust and transparency in our industry. Alex, I can see you're there, so I will hand over straight to you.
Thank you, Lauren. So let me share my, okay, so because I have a lot of screen, wait. Okay. So I guess now it's okay, right?
Yes, it's great. We can see your screen. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Lauren, for having me. So yes, I'm Alexander Agakura, Technical Director at IAB Europe. And following the debate on supply chain and transparency, I'm going to present you the latest new standard to drive trust and transparency. So the agenda today, I'm going to talk about at-stake stay. I'm going to talk about the new update. I'm going to talk about OpenRTB 2.6, the new one, Open Measurement SDK, and then I will talk about TCF, especially about the technical specification update, okay? So everything around transparency and the supply chain. So let's talk about at-stake stay 1.1. Just a background about that. It was introduced in 2017, okay? Authorized digital seller to reduce fraud, misrepresentation, domain spoofing, and unauthorized sale of ad inventory. With the later creation, additional disclosure of seller as further transparency through routes to the supply chain. So in addition, we have sellers.json, public and accessible file published by SSP or Exchange to enable buyers to identify the final sellers, okay? Identifies to discover the entities and so on, if it's direct or intermediaries. And then you have the supply chain object, a set of nodes where each node represents a specific entity that participate in the transacting of inventory. And then together, sellers.json and supply chain object are the mechanism to identify all intermediaries, okay, that participate in the money flow. And then today, there is a new at-stake stay 1.1 raised in August last month, and the idea is to add owner domain and manager domain variable. So regarding this new update, let's go back in the previous specification, at-stake stay 1.0.3. So inventory partner domain is a pointer to the domain of an entity that is explicitly authorized to monetize ads within the application content, which means, for example, you have a publisher dev site with the app at stake stay, okay? And then they declare their SSP, and then you have inventory partner domain, okay? In this case, the partner domain will be programmer A, okay? I will explain, okay, no worry, in the slide and the slide after. So regarding the two new fields in this version at-stake stay 1.1 released in the last month, you have owner domain now. So it specified the domain of the business that owns the website that the ad is being served on. And the other new field is manager domain. When the owner of the site does not manage monetization either globally or in specific country, the domain listed in manager domain is in charge of the monetization. So for example, you have the owner domain, which is mediacompany.com, okay? And then you have, for example, in this scenario, two manager domain per country. So yellow mediamanager.com for France, for monetization. And then you have blue mediamanager.com for the US, okay? This is very helpful in this scenario because it exists, okay? Following that, there are, of course, the use cases. So the use of manager domain versus inventory partner domain. So in this scenario, manager domain is used to represent a primary or exclusive programmatic seller of the publisher inventory and signify when a manager is the most direct path to the publisher inventory. And then you have inventory partner domain is used to represent companies that owns or has the right to sell a portion of ad on the underlying app where they are listed, okay? During the last months and years, there was a big focus, especially on CTV, okay, to manage those cases. And the two new at-stake fields, owner domain and manager domain again. So owner domain helps to connect the seller domain for publisher entries in sellers.json file, okay? And then manager domain helps to level the supply path optimization by linking at-stake directly to the sellers.json. So this is about @TXT update, the new version, okay? And now let's talk about OpenRTB 2.6 with the new update. So background, so of course, OpenRTB is a communication protocol that enables RTB, real-time building, to help the industry in programmatic between buyers and sellers, of course. OpenRTB 2.6 was released in 2022, okay? And before that, the previous version, OpenRTB 2.5, was released in December 2016. However, some of you already know that, but OpenRTB 3.0 exists since November 2018. But in fact, just a few are using it because, in fact, there is a delay in adoption, okay? Because programmatic industry still relies on 2.5 spec for many reasons, development, etc., adoption rate. And the hope is this 2.6 version as a step towards industry adoption for the 3.0 standard, of course. So let's talk about the update. So first one, impression counting with billing notice barrier. So the idea is really the best alignment between DSPs and exchange to count ads. Because just to be short, you have the DSP sending the ads with URL of counting. And the idea of this barrier is a new version in order to count at the same time with the SSP, okay? So to better align and to decrease, to have just a small discrepancy between sell side and buy side. Taxonomy. Before that, only IAB's content category taxonomy could be used. For example, SSP was able, currently, in fact, SSP is able to categorize the inventory. For example, if the domain is talking about car, something like that, the SSP can add the category to this domain as a car. But it was based on one taxonomy. Today, there is a new field named cat tax, and it allows the use of different taxonomy, okay? For example, ad product, ad audience, content, in the bid request, and also in the bid response. So this is an improvement, really interesting for sellers, but also for buyers, for the ad. Also, user agent information. Via browser agent, the user agent string provides a lot of information, enough close to identify the user. You have the browser, you have the desk, you can either if it's desktop, etc., etc. And the new user agent client enforce a mode, enable access to the same information, but in a more privacy-preserving way. So now OpenRTB 2.6 now support user agent client ins. So this is really nice. Now let's talk about the update, but only focus on audio and video. And there is a lot of things to say about that. First of all, pod bidding for video and audio content stream. Basically, an ad pod describes an ad break. Basically, an ad pod typically contains one or more in-stream creative assets that play out contiguously within a stream content. But you have different ad podding features: structured, dynamic, and hybrid. Just to talk about that, I'm going to take one example for the structured ad pod. For example, you have this one ad pod, and you have different slots, slot 1, slot 2, etc., etc. And following, if it's dynamic or hybrid, for example, you can see only two slots with slot 60 seconds, 60 seconds, or hybrid, making the difference between the time, etc., etc. Different scenario. Always about audio and video. Still about that, network versus channel. Prior to the release of OpenRTB 2.6, it was really difficult for buyers to identify the content in which they are placing their ad in the context of CTV, for example. Now, buyers can get the name of the TV, a network, and exact channel name in a human-readable format. So, for example, a user viewing content on an internet-connected device on a device offered channel. In this scenario, you have Roku, Fubo, Comedy Central show. In this scenario, Roku is a device, Fubo TV is a network, also identified by the bundle ID, and then Comedy Central is a channel. So it's really always talking about transparency, and this is really helpful for that. Then for SSI, server-side insertion, there is a new field to indicate this type, okay? Whether creative assets teaching and becoming happen from the client side or server side. And then there are two new fields in the bid response. Interesting, dur, which is the duration of the video or audio creative in seconds, and M type, which is a type of creative, if it's a banner, video, audio, and net. And then let's talk about the future of OpenRTB in the next 3 years. So currently, OpenRTB programmatic is evolving, okay, very fast. And the idea is with IAB Tech Lab to get extensions features faster, be more agile, take account the era, because for example, in European, we have, for example, we have TCF and other restriction we need to apply in our ecosystem. But for example, in the US, you have other. So the idea is really to be fast per area. Of course, compatibility, because according to each area, most of the company are compliant with OpenRTB 2.x, other one with 2.5, etc. Of course, it's based on the ad tech platform, okay, worldwide. But sometimes you have some disparate per area. Get shorter timelines for the development. Yes, the idea is really to avoid impacting the programmatic ecosystem. And the last one is privacy focus, of course. Make sure to be aligned with the privacy regulation, California rules, the TCF, etc., etc. Identify the data point to avoid any data leak, for example, and get guidelines, of course, in order to help the industry to evolve. Now let's talk about open measurement SDK. Just voila, it will be quick. IAB Open Measurement SDK to measure data, okay, to facilitate third-party access to measure data, okay. So now Open Measurement SDK 1.4 was released in June, okay, and now support CTV. 4 points. First one, identify CTV traffic, okay. New property has been added to understand if an integration has a compliant for given environment. CTV mobile. Second one, last activity. This new appear for signing if someone is still watching the content or if the device was left on. Third one, display connection status. A new value to understand when the TV display is off, okay, but application may still be running. And the last one, video pod measurement. A new native API in order to measure video ad pods with gapless playback for JavaScript session type. So now let's talk about the last one, the TCF technical specification update. It's about the specification vendor device storage and operational disclosure, okay? So the device storage JSON, you already may have heard about that before, was first introduced in 2020, okay, as an optional field. It followed the Planet 49 ruling, okay, which established a requirement to disclose the duration of cookies to obtain valid consent under the e-privacy directives. The file enabled vendors to provide additional details, okay, on the different cookies they may use and associated duration. The second part is to provide additional transparency and interoperability between TCF participants. This file have been revamped, okay, and is now mandatory as per notification sent in March, okay. And the last part is this JSON contains 2 types of information. The first part, called the disclosure area, is intended for user disclosure, as more and more data protection authorities recommend to provide the list of cookies susceptible to be placed on the user device, their purposes, and association duration. The second one, a part called the domain array, okay, is not intended for user disclosure, but aims to support TCF participants on technical and organization measurement at company level, okay, to monitor and ensure compliance of their technical integration with vendor partners, okay. So both are required. So not all information within each array is required, of course. Everything is explained in our application. And the new deadline is September 30th. Last slide is around the JSON file itself, okay? So the vendor publishes information and provide the URL to the TCF during the registration process. This file is in JSON format, is created, named, and published by the vendor. So we don't ask it anything. So it's really created, named, and published by the vendor, publicly accessible, and contain cookie or other storage mechanism, and domain used for collecting and processing personal data in the context of the TCF. In addition, with the GitHub spec, technical spec, we added FAQ, and this one is now available. The document addresses questions, including the use of domain instead of domain field, the use of wildcard, when the storage mechanism is set by a first party set, not first party set because I was thinking about the privacy sandbox, I'm sorry, but set by a first party, so on. And of course, as we are still communicating with the vendor, and sometimes the vendor have some question, sometimes the document will be and is updated over the time.